Hello, you guys. Welcome back to another episode of the Take 30 podcast. So, my guest today is Mr. Chris Johnson. He is the podcast host of the Passion Pod. And, Chris, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm glad to be here. I know we're many miles apart, but I'm glad we could make our schedules work out.
I know, and you did reach out to me on Instagram, and I was like, I would love to interview you. I love the work that you're doing with your podcast. You do have your own skate shop business, and we'll definitely go into that. But I just have one question to ask you. So, and this is something that I ask all my guests. What's something challenging that's happened in the last few weeks? It can be anything. It can be anything really, or like what's something you learned in the last few weeks. So it can be a book that you read, an article that you read, can be anything, or something maybe you saw on TV.
I got a cat in my lap right now. I would say it's around artwork. So I do a lot of art too. I paint murals. I paint custom shoes for people. I paint, and I do a lot of digital stuff, create stickers. I do a lot of different things. And when I'm struggling to find, the right creative juices for it, one thing that I've learned, talking to a lot of different creative people, whether it's like music artists or otherwise, is just pick something you don't even plan on using and try to recreate that. And that will kind of invoke creativity out of you naturally because it'll get your hands moving. So I was trying to figure out what to do with this pair of Nike Dunks that I was painting. And so I was just looking up other pairs of Nike Dunks that people were painting. And it's not like you want to find something and copy it, like that's what will work, but it's just more so like, look, find other things. And a lot of times that will kind of spark something. So I saw somebody painting on these Air Force Ones. I saw somebody painting not on the sole, but kind of on the side part of the sole where it says air. I saw somebody painting over that. And that just kind of sparked an idea where it was like, oh, cool. I never really thought about incorporating that at all into something that I was doing. And then it balanced the whole design out for me. So that's my suggestion, is if you're doing something creative, don't be afraid to look at what other people are doing and just start trying things, even if you don't necessarily plan on using it, because it'll spark something for you.
I love that. Yeah. I agree. And I love the podcast again that you have, and I love the title Passion Pod because it's basically your podcast is all about following your passion, right?
Right.
And kind of, taking for instance, if any of my listeners are listening, if they're artists, really taking that piece of art and turning it into something beautiful. And I really wholeheartedly believe that you can take a piece of, I don't know, like any kind of art and just turn it into something really beautiful.
Yeah, I think it's just about looking at the tools that are in front of you and figuring out, we're always talking about how to chase happiness, but find contentment, at the same time. And it's just like, look at the tools in front of you and how can you use those tools to pursue happiness in your own way. And passion kind of goes along with that, right? Because when you have a sense of purpose, it naturally invokes joy too. So whatever is in front of you, I relate a lot of things to skateboarding just because that's been the majority of my career. And one thing I tell kids all the time is stop trying to do what tricks everybody else wants you to do. Which ones are on trend that are cool or whatever. Do whatever is working for you. Different tricks work for different people. It's the same way with music. It's the same way with anything else. Some people are naturally good at different things. Whatever is feeling good for you and working, just like life is telling you something, go in that direction.
I 100% agree. And I think it's so important that if you are passionate about whatever that is, and like you're saying, take the tools, take whatever things you have in front of you, and you can turn it into something good and something beautiful. So it's all a matter of finding, taking what you have and, just kind of turning it into like this beautiful piece of art. And you will it will turn out something into something really, really beautiful.
Yeah, it'll turn out to be what it's meant to be.
What it's meant to be.
You know what I mean? However that looks. And you can, in today's world, you can make a living doing just about anything. Not that you have to make a living off your passion, because some people, they find when they do that, it takes the joy out of it. You don't have to do that necessarily.
Right.
But there is a way to be successful in just about anything. A big key is it doesn't have to work the way that you've seen it work for other people. You know what I mean? People see something and go, well, why aren't, my numbers for this thing growing? Why am I still struggling drawing this hand? Whatever whatever their thing is. And they think, well, in order to be successful, I need to be able to have this work because this is the model, that I'm working off of. But the world is constantly evolving and changing. The tools that are available are changing. What worked in the past doesn't necessarily
work now. Yeah.
It changes all the time. So if you can stop focusing on trying to make this work in the way that you thought it had to, and just focus on what is working at this moment, you know what I mean? I think it'll make it a lot easier for you to be successful, whether that success means financially as a career, or if that success means now this is a hobby that you just really enjoy and it takes the stress off your plate, whatever that is. I think if you just keep your mind open to this can work differently than I've seen it before. And in fact, it probably has to be different than I've seen it before.
Right. I agree. And like you're saying, some people maybe don't want to turn their passion into like a full-time, business or whatever, or, maybe they want to, because maybe it just doesn't bring them joy, but, just, having something, to do like, on the side or something to kind of still puts that spark in you. So I really like the way you articulated that. So
purpose,
right.
Like so that sense of purpose doesn't even have to be creative.
Right.
It's just you got to find what that is. And some people, their career, that is their sense of purpose. Not everybody is.
Right.
Some people are really passionate about other things, volunteering or whatever that thing is. Having a sense of purpose is extremely important, and there's a ton of studies that prove that. I mean, there's books written about it too, you know what I mean? Like there's that book called A Man's Search for Meaning. Have you read that book, or are you familiar with that book?
I am not.
It's a book written by Victor. If you look it up, you'll find it. It's super easy to find. But it's written by this Jewish doctor that during the Holocaust, the Nazis, like, instead of him being a Holocaust survivor as far as being a prisoner, he was on the opposite end, not by choice, but like that's what the Nazis forced his role to be. And so he wrote about his experiences and stuff in this book, Victor Frank, that's what it's called. And in it, he was describing how he saw two different people that realistically had the same type of thing, same body type, same age, same sustenance, same everything. And one would die significantly sooner than the other would die. And you'd see some of these people hang on so much beyond what their body should have been capable of. And of course, we're talking about something completely horrific. But the book was more so just talking about like the scientific fact of why was that the case, right? And what he found it was because the people who had a strong sense of purpose, that's what helped them carry on through that. And hopefully nobody ever has to go through something like that again. But on a much, much less significant scale, when you're just talking about struggling through depression or anything else with your life, it is a similar concept of if you have a sense of purpose, that will really help you carry through those dark times and bring you back to the light. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. I should definitely check out that book. That sounds like a really good book to read.
Yeah, my therapist did with me years ago, and it was a very eye-opening book, and it's a fairly short one, but it was written a long time ago. It's like I said, it's easy to find. It's a pretty famous one, but I would really recommend that one.
Awesome. So Chris, I'm gonna just ask you. So just tell us just a little bit about yourself, and your background and where you grew up and things like that.
Yeah, I'm actually in the house that I grew up in right now. I ended up buying it, which is pretty
cool.
My kids get to climb the same trees and stuff that I did when I was a kid. It's awesome. So I live in a town called Eau Claire, which stands for Clear Water. It's in central Wisconsin. It's actually about 90 miles east of Minneapolis, Minnesota. That would be like
Hmm.
the closest big city, but like kind of right in the middle of the state like that. My parents moved here when I was 2. I'm 33 now, and I've lived here pretty much my whole life. I've visited, I think, like 10 countries, 36 states. I've like stayed other places, but Eau Claire is really where I wanted to stay long term. It's just a great place to grow up. It's a great place to raise a family.
Hmm.
I have 2 daughters. They're 7 and 10, and this was where I wanted to raise my kids. I used to be in sales for an extended period of time. I suppose I am to a certain degree still, but I did sales from when I was 16 until my last job, which was about 10 years ago. I was an assistant manager for Verizon Wireless, selling my soul. It was kind of how
Right.
I was selling things to people that they didn't need, that they probably couldn't really afford for a company that doesn't even pay its taxes. I just kind of
Yeah,
hated it,
yeah.
you know?
And what's funny too, like sorry to cut you off, is we used to have Verizon, and I mean like just their cell phone service is so expensive. We were paying like $600 for it, and I'm like, whoa. I mean, don't get me wrong, Verizon has good service, but that's just exorbitant.
Yeah, it's just yeah, it's horrible. It's horrible. And I didn't even make it a year in that job, and I was doing super well. I was
Mhm.
making like 70,000 a year when I was 22 without a degree. Like I was
Mhm.
doing really well, but I just hated it. I knew that I was contributing to the world in a negative way, and it was a hard pill to swallow every day. And I had a bunch of stuff happen to me. My parents got divorced. My dad almost died and had a heart transplant. I had gotten married and I had my first kid. All of that kind of happened in a fairly short time frame, and it really got me to think about like, what the purpose of my life is. If I were to die suddenly, like my dad almost did, would I be proud of what I had spent my life doing? And at that point, I just didn't think that was true. It was like, no, this isn't. If I died tomorrow, this isn't the story that I want people to tell about my life. And so
Right.
I started really thinking about, well, what do I really want to do?
Mhm.
And I'd wanted to open a skateboard shop since I was like 14. I'd
Mhm.
been skateboarding pretty much my whole life. I think I started when I was 9 or 10 years old. And when I was a teenager, when I was like 14, there was a little skateboard shop in town, and I would hang out there all the time. It was like my favorite place in the world, and the people that worked there, I looked up to a lot. And to me, it was like my second home kind of clubhouse thing. It was like such a cool space for me to grow up in. And that shop had changed ownership and went out of business over time. So there hadn't been a skateboard shop for quite a while in my town, and timing was just kind of right. We had been raising money for a free public skate park since as long as I can remember. I designed
Mhm.
printed t-shirts in high school when I was 15 that said build us a park already. It was so
Ooh.
cool to raise money for the skate park that finally got built when I was 23. Like it took a
Mhm.
long time. We got that park built, and it just was kind of obvious. Like our town could support a skateboard shop now because we finally have a free public park, and skateboarding was kind of on the rise again. And it just was the right opportunity. It was the right timing, and I thought, well, if I'm going to take a risk, sooner the better. Before
Right.
I have another kid, before they get older. This, as expensive as a baby is, it doesn't get cheaper. So
No.
I'm going to take a risk. Now's the time to take the risk.
Mhm.
And so I signed the lease in January for the space I'm still in of 2014. And then I worked full time at Verizon. On one of my 2 days off, I spent a 12-hour day working at Hellsberg Diamonds, where I used to be an assistant manager of. And then I
Mhm.
spent every other minute outside of that getting my store ready. And I opened up April 11th of 2014 that year. And the weekend before I opened were like my last days working for anybody else, and that's it. I never went back. So I've been doing that ever since 2014, and it's been awesome being a downtown business owner and being involved in my community in that kind of way. As
Mhm.
time has gone on, just established myself more. I was 23 when I opened my business, so I was kind of the young kid not knowing what he was doing.
Right.
Eventually I became the long-standing business, as weird as that feels. So I got more involved in other things. I've always done fundraising, but now I'm the vice chair of the Parks and Waterways Commission with my city, so I'm involved in city politics a little bit.
Mhm.
I started my podcast a little over 4 years ago to kind of expand upon what I was doing, just not exclusively skateboarding. I wanted to be able to inspire and help other people at large. So I started doing that. During that general time frame, I started painting. think I was maybe 28 when I started painting, which is pretty late. But I
Mhm.
started painting, and that kind of now has become a really significant part of my life too. So currently, that's what I balance. I own a skateboard shop. I work with the city on getting parks and different things built. I paint murals large scale in my area and in other places. And I interview people as often as I can possibly find time to, and try to travel outside of that as much
Yeah.
as I can.
Awesome. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I love your story, especially with going from, a full-time job and transitioning to having your skateboard business. And now you have a podcast and you interview different people and kind of just tell your story. And so we kind of dived into, owning your business and your kind of your entrepreneurship journey, right?
Yeah.
So just go ahead and just tell us just a little bit more about your podcast, because your podcast is amazing,
Thank you.
and tell us your journey, with starting your podcast, because I know like podcasting comes with a lot of self doubt, and it comes with a lot of obviously a lot of planning because this can be a full time job.
Yeah.
So just tell us just a little bit more about your podcast, The Passion Project, and kind of just, you know, maybe talk a little bit about, your journey as to starting that.
Cool. Yeah. So my show is called Passion Project. I call it an inspirational storytelling experience featuring unique guests that are also pursuing careers based on their passions in order to try to help inspire other people to chase their own passions and show them how they can potentially do that. So the goal is by listening to all these people from different industries that are doing things that they really care about for a living, that you can kind of pick little bits and pieces from how all these people are able to do that, and figure out that's how you can do your own thing. So it's not like hey, these are all musicians. This is how you can be a professional musician. It's people from all different industries. I've had people who own beer companies, who brew beer. I've had people who own clothing companies and are designers. I've had dancers and choreographers. I've had photographers. I've had painters. Just kind of like to be able to show you that it doesn't really matter what you're passionate about. There is a way to make that a bigger part of your life, whether it's a career or otherwise. So I always thought that because skateboarding was like my life, that spark that I had within the skateboarding community with conversations when you talk to other skateboarders, I thought that was kind of exclusive to that, this kind of like family vibe. And I found that that really wasn't necessarily the case. So I have my own brand. Passion's like the name of my brand. My skateboard shop is called Passion Board Shop, which is what extended into, the Passion Pod. Um, and I would have friends of mine all the time tell me, yeah, I would I would wear passion merchandise, but I don't skate. So I feel like a poser, which I thought was so silly because people go to like Azumi's in the mall who don't skate all the time. Like, what does it really matter if you skate or not? Why don't you just support your friend's business? Like I'm doing. So I was trying to think of ways like, how can I get people to understand that, yes, Passion Board Shop, like that was where everything started for me. That's what I do for a living. But the brand isn't exclusively about skateboarding. You can be passionate about other things. And so a rapper friend of mine, his name's Miles Boulevard, I had finally listened to his music. He was like a local kid who had been doing rap for a long time. And I finally got around to listening to his stuff and was very pleasantly surprised. I kind of thought it wasn't going to make it. You know what I mean? We're not in a big town. There's not a big rap scene. But I listened to it and I was like, wow, this is really rad. So when I saw him, I was like, dude, I'm super impressed by the music. What do you think about maybe being like a brand ambassador? Because I already sponsor skateboarders, that promote passion clothing and everything else. It's like, what do you think about wearing like passion clothing at shows and stuff? And he had grown up skateboarding and looked up to me and was like, dude, yes, I would love to. And I said, cool. Well, I honestly don't know very much about you. So do you want to just hang out just so I can know who is wearing and repping my brand for me? It would be cool. So we got together, a few days later and talked for a long time. And I essentially interviewed him. That wasn't the goal, but that's kind of what happened.
Mhm.
And I had already been the guest on a different podcast prior, this like Minneapolis skateboarding podcast, because I own a skateboard shop. So I already
Mhm.
had experience of doing that. And when I did that, felt like, wow, I like this. This is something I feel like I could potentially do. So it was in the back of my head for a while of like, maybe one day, you know? And so I talked to Miles and I was like, dude, this could have been a podcast interview. And I've been kind of thinking about it. What do you
Mhm.
think about coming over in a week and recording this conversation again? I don't know if I'll use it. What do you think we do that? And he said, yeah, anything. It doesn't matter. So a week
Yeah.
later, came over and we just set my laptop. I have pictures of it. Set my laptop between us, no microphones, just like the internal mic of the computer, and recorded essentially that conversation, like had it again, interviewing him. And it turned out way better than I thought it was going to be. So I asked another friend, like who owned a business, hey, what do you think about doing this? I don't know if I'll use it. And they're like, yeah, sure. So I did another one. Turned out better than I thought it would be. And then I ended up doing a total of 10 interviews where each guest was from a totally different industry. I treated it kind of like an album where I
Mhm.
didn't put anything out. I actually went back and re-recorded the first 2 episodes again once I'd gotten better equipment, so they sounded better like all the other ones did. And then once I was done editing all of them, I gave myself a month to market and promote it, to figure out how do I want to put this out to the world. So
Yeah.
I was able to get in contact with my local independent radio station, which is Converge Radio, where I live. It's 101.9 FM. Sent
Okay.
a few of the episodes to the dude in charge of the station manager, and he loved them. He was like, "Yeah, we would definitely host this." So from the very beginning, the first episode ever premiered on Converge Radio.
Mhm.
I want to say it was like November 4 years ago, and
Oh,
from
cool.
there it's been permanently on the radio. So now I'm on 3 radio stations, and I'm on twice a week. They re-air episodes because I don't put new episodes out twice a week. That would be a lot.
Right.
It airs on all of those. Eventually, it expanded, and now I have 3 video camera angles and do it for YouTube, and I get hired for, like I said, music festivals. I just was backstage for this like pop punk emo festival where I interviewed Tom Higginson from the Plain White T's, the Hey There
Ooh.
Delilah guy. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So it's expanded to be a big part of my life. And at first, it kind of was just business owners and people in my town. And I found that there was just a lot of overlap with stories because we all kind of grew up with the same stuff, and I wanted to kind of expand it in the same way I wanted to expand out of skateboarding. And so I started traveling. I did a whole trip to California for my second season, and I did an interview in San Francisco. I did one in LA. I did one in Santa Cruz. So I started traveling for that. During the pandemic, I had to shut down my business. A
Mhm.
lot of people were available. That was
Right.
season 4, season 5 of my show by that point. But I started going out to LA a lot, kind of built a network out there. And, people in LA aren't from LA anyways. So started
Right.
interviewing all these people from all over the place with all these crazy, cool stories. And it really kind of grew quickly. And so now um, I'm kind of more focused on interviewing people in my area that aren't even necessarily from it, as in
Okay.
like we don't have a significant interviewing personality in the Midwest. Like that's not a
Mhm.
thing. We don't have a Joe Rogan. We don't have a Howard Stern. We don't have a Anderson Cooper. Like whatever. We don't have one.
Right.
So that's kind of where I'm trying to position myself, as interviewing people that are, it's still the same type of thing, like as many
Mhm.
creative individuals as possible. I just interviewed somebody who owns a curiosity shop, selling like teeth and skulls and crazy stuff. Like that episode just came out on Monday. So still as eclectic as possible. But interviewing people that are either in the Midwest or are coming through the Midwest, whether they're on a tour or whatever else. And now it's a big part of my career. Like I said, it's
Right.
not, it was just kind of a side project that I did for fun. And it's still something that I would do for free anyways, because I really like doing it. But thankfully,
Mhm.
I've been able to build it into being like a pretty big part of what I do for a career.
Wow, that's amazing. So like you kind of got to travel and see different states and interview people from all different parts of the U.S.
Yeah.
That's that's amazing. And so are you doing in-person interviews mostly?
I've only done in-person interviews. I did
Okay.
one remote one ahead of a music festival with the guitarist that was coming for the festival, that I really just considered like a bonus interview.
Mhm.
Um, in person's just a different experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's cool to connect with people regardless. It's
Hmm.
cool to connect with people on Instagram when you never even see their face, right?
Right.
It's cooler when you can see their face and all of a sudden you're, on a chat like this. But when
Hmm.
you're in person, it's you really get to build a relationship with these people. And I didn't start my podcast to be a business. You know what I mean? I did it because I enjoy doing it. And what I enjoy most isn't the editing. It's not putting out the content later. It's not dealing with sponsorships. It's having these really awesome, genuine conversations with these really cool people that I otherwise wouldn't have a great excuse to talk to. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So
Yeah.
in person, it brings me so much more happiness that even though it costs me significantly more money, like last year I went to New York City for a week and I did a bunch of interviews in New York. Did I have to
Ooh.
spend money going to New York City to interview people? No, I could have just like done them remotely for sure. And all those people would have been down, but the experience for me wouldn't have been the same. So it's a selfish thing, but I do think it creates a better overall show for people as well because it's so much more personal.
Right. And I feel like, I mean, I've only mostly done remote because, but I honestly would love to do more in-person interviews. I mean, with expenses, it's a little bit much, but um, it's that feeling of being able to connect with that person if you do in-person interviews versus remote. I mean, it's good, but
Yeah.
and I mean you still get to connect with that person, but like it's like there's just something about being in person, actually interviewing people and actually talking to people, and that's kind of where like I hope in the future I'm able to do. And I think connecting with people in person, you actually get to meet them face to face, and that's like that's actually one goal of mine that I hope to plan in the future. But that's awesome that you're able to meet different people. You were able to travel, you got that kind of experience.
Yeah.
So maybe just tell us just about what advice would you have for somebody who may want to start their own business or start their own podcast, but they just really don't know where to start. And they're possibly like, they're stuck, like thinking in their heads, thinking, oh, this isn't going to be a good show, or this isn't going to be a good business. So, like, kind of, what advice would you give to somebody who, may want to start a business, may want to start a podcast, but maybe just don't know where to start?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much advice, right?
Mhm.
To be able to
Yeah.
give somebody because you're talking about a clean slate.
Mhm.
The biggest one I would say is people just need to get out of their own way. People just they build something up to be so much more difficult than it is. Not that it's not hard to be successful, but they build it up to be a lot more difficult than it is. Like I mentioned with my podcast, right? Like I put my laptop that I already had, not for recording. I just had a laptop. Most people do. I
Mhm.
put it in between me and my friend, downloaded Audacity, which is a free recording program, and hit record. And we recorded a podcast.
Mhm.
You don't have to put out the things that you make publicly. Nobody has to know.
Right.
So there's no reason to be embarrassed.
Mhm.
Make something, expect it probably not to be great. But honestly, what will likely happen is it'll be better than you were thinking it was going to be. And once you get the momentum going, it's hard to stop. It's just about getting that first thing. People put it off. Even when, again, talking about my podcast, I had kind of been thinking about doing one for quite a while and I just never did. And then when I recorded that first one with my friend, it was like, wow, this is very accessible to me. There's no reason I can't do this. I'm hanging out with my friends anyways. Now I'm just
Mhm.
a little more intentionally hanging out with these people. And I did a whole 10 episode season before I even knew what I was even going to do with it. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
then I polished it up. I went back and re recorded two of the episodes because I wasn't happy with how they were, which made sense. They were the first ones. Of course, they weren't going to be that good until
Right.
I had it kind of ready to do what I wanted with it. But I think people are just afraid that they're going to be bad at something, that it's not going to be worth their time. You just need to do it. And like I said, just you don't even have to tell anybody that you did it. Nobody has to
Right.
know. You know what I mean?
Right.
Think of it as like a guilty pleasure of watching a TV show that you don't want people to know because it's trash TV. Like just
Mhm.
spend your time doing something that it doesn't matter if it's going to be good or not. and see if it brings you happiness. See if you want to do more with it. It's you get the momentum going and it'll go. That and resources are everywhere. Anything you want to do, you can Google how to do it.
Mhm.
If you can't find a good step by step, you can find somebody such as you or me that you could DM, and most people would respond and tell you, hey, this is what I think. If you want my advice, I'm happy to try to share what I know. There's people are pretty open to be able to help with that stuff. So yeah, I don't know, just get out of your own way and start something. Just
Start something.
do it. It'll be better than you think it's going to be.
Right. And that's the same thing kind of with me as far as like I've been wanting to start my own podcast, but I didn't start until last year. So I'm kind of fairly new trying to get out there. But I've been wanting to start one since I want to say like when the pandemic first started, when everybody was just at home. But but I was, like you were saying, like I was so stuck like in my head of like, oh, I don't know how this is going to turn out, or I don't know if people are going to watch it. So it really took courage for me to say, okay, record the first episode, see what you like about it. And I mean, it's the first episode. Of course, it's not going to be the best,
Right.
but you don't have to let people know that, oh, you plan on starting a podcast, or, oh, I plan on having this business. Like, it's just a matter of starting. And once you start and once you publish that first episode, like you're saying, it's really hard to you to let go of that momentum. You will start to enjoy doing it. And like with podcasting for me, I love it. I love meeting people, especially people like you. I love getting to talk to others and connect with them on a different level. So I love the way that you were saying that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think another good resource is just a book that is another pretty famous book. It's called The Four Agreements. Are you
Mhm.
familiar with that book?
No, I'm not.
It's like a self-help book kind of, right? And
Mhm.
the idea of it is if you follow these four agreements or like mentalities, essentially these four like life rules to live by, that it'll
Mhm.
drastically improve your life. Um, and one of the four agreements is to do your best, which sounds kind of like silly and simple. But what it means is in any individual moment, accept that your best isn't perfect, but it's the best you can do right now. And if you do that and you're okay with the best that you can do right now, you will see continuous growth. And when you see growth like that, it's very encouraging. So don't be hard on yourself, right? Like I was
Right.
talking to my girlfriend the other day. She was
Mhm.
listening to an episode of the show and kind of critiquing it and saying, yeah, I wish she would have done this differently or said this differently or whatever. And she wasn't being critical in a mean way. But, I was just trying to explain to her, like, yeah, I agree. You know how many
Mhm.
times, know how many hours I've listened back to myself talking and go, wow, I really don't like how I said that. I feel like I came across egotistical in that moment or self centered, or why didn't I ask this obvious question that should have been the follow up in this moment?
Right.
Well, it's because for the most part, we're doing this in one take and it's off the top of the head. No matter how much you prepare, you're still just
Mhm.
going into a conversation with one take, trying to do the best that you possibly can do in that moment. So do the best you can. Look at the things afterwards and go, what could I have done better? It's totally okay that I didn't, because that was the best I could do in that moment.
Mhm.
But next time is going to be better because now I have noticed this. And just don't be overly critical. One thing that happens with adults is like we're so afraid of being bad at things,
Mhm.
because we like think that by our age, whatever that is, we should be good at something by now. That's what held me
Right.
back with my art career for so long is I didn't take art classes growing up. I was always jealous of all the kids that could draw. I always thought I just wasn't an artist.
Mhm.
So I thought I was too old. If I was going to be an artist, I should have been an artist by now. Well, that was kind of silly, to have that mentality. And
Mhm.
I was going through a divorce at the time and I was really in a bad place emotionally, just mentally in a horrible space. And I was finally in a place where I just didn't care about much of anything really at that point. But that also meant I didn't care if I was bad at something or what people thought of what I was going to make, because I just didn't care about a lot. And it's sad, but that was the situation that got me to realize that it didn't matter if I created art that sucked.
Right.
What did it really matter? It didn't matter.
Right.
And
right.
so that's what got me painting. And I wasn't as bad as I thought I was going to be, because I just thought I couldn't be that person, because I couldn't be bad at something. I was good at certain things, and that was who I was. That was my identity at that point. But that doesn't have to be your identity the whole rest of your life. You can grow and you can start new things, and it's okay to be bad at something at the beginning. Again, you don't even have to show anybody. Not that there's any shame in being bad in it anyways, but really, if you're worried about being bad about something, nobody even has to know that you're bad at it.
Right.
You can do it. If that thing is pulling you in, something you're interested in, you can try it, and nobody even has to know. And then it probably will be easier than you think it is. You'll probably gain a lot of momentum with it and go, wow, I'm really glad that I finally took a chance and started doing that thing.
Right. I agree. Like you, and I think you're right when you're saying that especially adults, like we're so afraid of being bad at something because we're always known as, oh, we're good at this or we're good at that. But it doesn't, you don't have to be good at something at first, because there's always growth alongside of, like, for instance, art. There's always ways you can improve over time. So, like, I remember, and this was a while back. I don't really draw like that anymore.
Sure.
But I remember when I saw my cousin. She was a beautiful artist. Like she could take a photo. She could even see you right now and draw you, right? And I would look at her art and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I wish. And then I would used to say, like, I wish I was good at that. And then a few years later, I actually started looking at YouTube videos, and I actually started copying some of the art. And I was like, and I look at some of the drawings that I did, and I said, I used to be bad at. I actually said I used to be bad at art, or I said that I wasn't good at it. I actually turned out to be better than I thought I was going to be.
Yeah. It's a skill you learn. It's like,
yeah.
It's not. People aren't born with it. When they say that, that's not true. People are naturally good at different things, but nobody's born with it. It's a skill that you grow in. And one thing is just like, don't think because somebody is good at something and you think you can't be good at that. Why do you have to be good at that? You don't have to be good at that. You can be good at whatever works for you. In relation to what I was talking about with skateboarding, same way with art. I don't draw portraits. I'm not good at realism, and I get hired to do huge murals, and I can't do murals. Well, I shouldn't say I can't do realism. I'm sure it's a skill I could learn. I don't have interest in it. I'm super impressed by it. When I see people that do it, I'm like, wow, I don't think I'll ever do something like that. But that's not like off-putting to me, because I do something else. I found what makes me happy, and I do my own thing. So when you look at what other people are doing and you see it as like out of reach because it's so good, you'll never be that good, you're just going into it with the wrong mentality. That person probably took a lot of time to get to that point, and you're not even necessarily trying to get to that exact same point anyways. Even if you set out and that's where you think you want to go, you'll probably discover something along the way that's going to change your path to go somewhere else. So just stop focusing on this thing being this off in the distance, unobtainable situation, because you don't ever have to get to that place.
Right. And I agree. And when people say, like, okay, this person was born, quote unquote, with this talent, you never know, like, how far it actually took them to get that good with, like, their art. It probably have taken them a long time. They probably started off with drawing stick figures, and then all of a sudden they went to drawing real things. Like, it's amazing art, but like maybe, like you were saying, like maybe you might not be passionate about that kind of thing, but you really don't know somebody's journey from when they started, because for me, like, especially when I was a little kid, like, I actually started drawing like little stick figures. So I never considered, at the time, I never considered myself as an artist. And then as time went on, I started watching little YouTube videos on like how to draw, simple little things. And I remember I drew, I don't know if you're familiar with The Boss Baby, that movie, The Boss Baby.
I'm more than familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Boss Baby. So like I actually looked at art on YouTube, and I actually drew him like step by step, and I was like, wow, this turned out pretty good than I thought it was. So like I do actually plan on giving that Boss Baby to my nephews, because like they love. Yeah.
It's because we only see people's success stories.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see them when they suck at the beginning, so you think they didn't suck at the beginning. But they did
right.
At the beginning. They just didn't share it with the world in the same way that I keep saying. You don't have to share it with the world either.
Right.
Somebody else does. I mean, I think it is great when people are, open and honest online. I think people really enjoy that. Obviously, you're seeing all the like before and after makeup photos celebrities put out, just showing transparency of this is what the world actually looks like, and people appreciate that. But I'm just saying, like, what we generally see are the successes. We don't see anything that leads up to that success. We don't see all the times they were turned down for things. We don't see all the heartbreak. We don't see any of that, because that's not the story that is being told through the media that we watch. But that's not the whole story. That's not how it actually worked. Anybody that I've talked to that's very successful, all of them, they, and even if they got success young, it's because their life when they were a child was revolved around that thing, because their parents had them in that, or whatever the situation is. Like people, I'm not saying it's an even playing field where everyone works it, like earns things at the same level in the same way, because it isn't a fair world. That isn't the case. But people don't get really good at something out of nowhere. They're not born with it. They did work to be able to achieve that, and that is achievable to you as well. You just have to actually start it. And it's never too late to start those types of things. Like, yes, you're not going to be a track star and break the world record if you start running in your 40s. But that doesn't mean that you can't break your own personal records with it, that you can't still go run marathons or whatever the thing is. You know what I mean? It's never too late to do those types of things. The average person, I want to say, changes careers like 7 times in their life. Like industries, like changes careers drastically. Why can't you change what you put your time into? You're not the same person today as you were yesterday. If you look at who you were 5 years ago, you're a drastic different person. Even your interests are different. Movies that you used to like, you don't like anymore. You know what I mean? You're an evolving person in an evolving world. So whatever is drawing, whatever you're drawn to, even if you're not good at it now, there's no reason why that can't be your next thing. And again, it doesn't even have to be your career. It could just be something that brings you joy. You don't expect to be super good at a video game if you buy it. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's not really any different if you're talking about podcasting or anything else. You're probably not going into it with the mentality of this is going to be my career right away. If you are, then maybe you're being a little naive in that situation, and you have to like build it up a little bit. But even when you talk about owning a business, like you don't have to get a brick and mortar store immediately. Like you can do pop-up shops. You could build an online thing. You can. One thing I've noticed with successful people is they never say, I wonder if I can do it. It's never about if. Whatever thing they're trying to achieve, they know they're going to achieve it. It's not if, it's just how and how long. How are they going to get there? How long is it going to take to get there? They're going to get there no matter what. It's just how do we do it? And if you can go in with that mentality, it's kind of a game changer. You just can't let that self-doubt creep in.
And I think it's all a matter of like you're saying, it's a matter of shifting your mindset into a more positive one. And I think when we start new things, especially as adults, we think it's too late, or quote unquote, or we think that we have to be good at it at first. And like you're saying, you don't have to be good at something at first. Like nobody's good at it at first. Let's put it that way. As long as you start it, as long as it may absolutely suck, but you started, and nobody has to know that you started this project, right? So like, you don't have to share everything with other people. Like you don't even have to share that, okay, you're starting your business or your side hustle. Um, you're starting it for you as long as you start it. So, and I think as adults, and we're so stuck with this mentality that we have to be good at something, right? And in all honesty, we don't have to be good at it. There's always a matter of growth, and you know, when people quote unquote say that this person or was born to do this, they're not born with that talent, right? They when as kids you don't know that you're starting to discover like your interests, but over time they change. And so we as adults have to be a little bit more adventurous, right? And start new things, even if that new thing may suck at first. And I mean, it's your first project. I mean, of course it's going to suck at first. It's your first, passion project. Of course it's going to suck at first, but eventually, as time goes on, you'll get better at it. Right. And so, I think as adults, and I mean, even as young kids, they start developing the mentality of like, look, we have to be good at, quote unquote, good at this particular thing. Right. But you don't. If you just start and you know that you're passionate about it, go for it. Go after what you're passionate about. And I know there's, I know there's going to be, you're going to possibly have a little bit of self-doubt or imposter syndrome at first, but it's a matter of overcoming it and taking that leap of faith and taking that first step.
Yeah. So look at like your own growth in comparison to yourself, right? Like, because no matter how successful you are, the natural thing to do is look at the people on that current tier that are like your comparable peers, and you compare yourself. It's the keeping up with the Joneses of, well, I'm still not as good as this person. And that's a never-ending cycle. But if you look at where you were the day before, how much you've grown, it's a lot more encouraging because now you are better. Even if you're not good or whatever, you're still better than you were. And if you continuously see yourself as better than I was rather than I'm still worse than, again, it's all a mentality thing. You know what I mean? If you can shift the mindset on it, you're going to be so much more happy and you're going to be able to grow. And do you really want to be stagnant forever? Like, do you want to have the same exact hobbies when you're a kid as you are in your 30s and your 40s and your 50s? Like, man, very few people spend their entire life pursuing the same thing. That's a rarity. Most people, they shift around and they do different things throughout their life, and things come in and out of their life. Like, that's all kind of part of life. It's supposed to be that way.
Exactly, and I totally agree with that. So Chris, my last question is for you is everyone is talking about self-care, right? Self-care is talked about on social media, on television, everywhere you see it. Everybody's talking about self-care. So I just want to know, how do you define self-care? And what self-care activities do you incorporate in your everyday life?
There's a lot. One person I interviewed, his name's Ian Allison. He's a studio-based guitarist. He plays on a lot of people's projects and stuff, and he performs live and stuff too in Minneapolis. And we were talking about how he makes his decisions for how he spends his time, where he goes with his career. And he said, when you see something or you hear something or you're doing something and you get the feeling of, oh, cool. And I was like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. He's like, that. Whatever that is, I go that way. So whatever in that day gives me the feeling of, oh, cool. I don't think of how I'm going to make money doing it. I don't think of whether that's, the most useful way to spend my time or how other people are going to think about me spending my time that way. I just go in that direction. And believe it or not, typically success follows that because I'm stoked on whatever that thing is, which means it's going to turn out better. So it usually works. I'm not saying that you can't don't have to pay attention to business or money or anything like that. Like, those things have to be incorporated and have to be considered to a certain degree, but those should kind of be the secondary thing you think of. not the first thing. Don't go into it with like, how am I going to make money doing this? It's just what during your day gives you the feeling of, cool, yeah, I would like that. Sometimes that just means like stopping getting coffee for yourself that day. Whatever that thing is, just go do that. So for me, that's how I try to live my life. If art's not working today, I work on something else. Whatever that day is calling, like my day would be more enjoyable if I do this thing today. That's how I'm going to choose to spend my time.
I love that. Yeah, it's all about, and this is something I look at self-care. It's all about listening to, what your body, I think, and what do I need for today? And if this is not working out, like what's something else that can bring me joy, right? And yeah, I 100% agree with what you said. And honestly, I think that should wrap up this episode. So thank you so much, Chris, for coming on the show. Please let all of my listeners know where they can find you, where they can find your podcast, and where they can connect with you on social media.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm pretty good about the main platform social media wise. I don't really use Facebook. I have a TikTok and I post to it, but I don't check it often. The best one would be Instagram. That's just Passion Pod. You'll find me. It's super easy. But that's what I am on every platform. YouTube as well. That's kind of the newer venture. I invested in more, so now I have 3 camera angles and spend too much money to get the right stuff. But now the show looks fantastic. So if you watch a more recent episode, it's pretty rad. You can find all 100, however many. I used to do them in seasons, and now I'm renumbering them. But there's 100 some. Every episode is with a different guest. It'll say the person's name, but then in parentheses what they do. So there's no reason to listen to it in any order necessarily. Just pick whatever guest seems to be like, oh, that's an industry, that would be interesting to me. Or maybe you recognize somebody. I've had a decent number of fairly famous people. Maybe like if you're into snowboarding, I interviewed a pro snowboarder. Like maybe you know that person. Hop on and listen to that one. If you've seen the show New Girl, like that was a pretty famous TV show. I had Lamorne Morris, the dude who plays Winston, on the show. Hop on that
one. What?
Really good one,
So, that's awesome.
Yeah, that was rad. I went to his house. That was during the pandemic.
What? That's so cool.
Yeah, but you can find the episodes everywhere. They're on Spotify, they're on Apple. YouTube, like I said, is new, and that's all video, which is rad. But whatever platform works for you, you can go there. Social medias, Instagram's the main one. Send me a DM. I do check them. Otherwise, like I said, TikTok and stuff. You find YouTube Shorts. I'm posting on all the things. If you ever want to come up through the Midwest, Eau Claire is 90 miles east of Minneapolis. You can find me at my store, which is Passion Board Shop. You can also follow that on social media if you would like. But I'm a very available person. I would love it if people popped over, checked out what I'm doing. My show's not about me. It's about all these really cool people I've interviewed. I highly doubt that you can listen to those episodes and not find something of value.
Wow, that's amazing. So you guys, thank you so much again, Chris, for coming on the show. And I will link your podcast, your Instagram handles, and where they can find you on social media in the link in the bio. I mean, in the show notes below. I have to remember that I'm not talking about Instagram right now. Anyway, so thank you guys so much again for listening to the show. So you can find me on Instagram at my personal Instagram is at Holloway_Erykah99, and the podcast Instagram handle is at the Take 30 Podcast. I am also on TikTok, which is the Take 30 Podcast, which I'll link all of those in the show notes. And I'm also on Facebook. I'm trying to get better with using all social media platforms, but sometimes it's just hard for me to keep up. But you guys can find me on there as well. And you guys can also find me on threads.net, which is at the Take 30 Podcast. So I hope you guys have a lovely day. Thank you again, Chris, for coming on the show. And I will talk to you guys in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.